AITA for refusing to keep funding my sister's temporary lifestyle after it turned into a permanent expectation. I, 32M, work as a software engineer and make a pretty good living. I'm not rich, but I'm comfortable. My younger sister, Lena, 27F, has always been more of a free spirit. Growing up, she was the artistic type, always trying different things like photography, pottery, streaming, selling handmade jewelry, and a dozen other things that never really stuck. For most of our lives, her parents helped her out a lot financially. Not because they loved her more, but because she always seemed to be between things. When our parents retired and moved to another country 2 years ago, they told both of us that they wouldn't be able to keep supporting Lena anymore. At the time, she said she understood and would figure things out. About 3 months after they left, Lena called me crying because she couldn't make rent. I've always been close with her, so I transferred her the money. It wasn't a huge deal for me, and she promised she'd pay me back once she got stable. A few weeks later, she needed help again, this time for groceries and utilities. Again, I helped. I figured she was adjusting and needed a little time. But then it kept happening. Every month, there was some new emergency. Rent, vet bills, a broken laptop, a phone bill she forgot about. I started noticing that none of these things were actually emergencies. They were just normal expenses that she wasn't covering because she didn't have a steady job. Whenever I suggested she get something more stable, she would say she was building her brand. At the time, she was trying to become a full-time lifestyle content creator online. Her accounts had maybe a few hundred followers total. Still, I didn't want to crush her dream, so I kept helping. Over the next year, I probably sent her somewhere around 8,000 euros. She never paid any of it back, but she constantly reassured me that once her channel took off, she would. The moment I started reconsidering things was when I visited her apartment last fall. She had just asked me for help covering rent again. When I got there, I noticed a bunch of brand new stuff. A ring light setup, a fancy microphone, new clothes with tags still on them, and a camera that definitely cost more than my monthly car payment. When I asked her about it, she casually told me she had put it all on a credit card because it was an investment. I pointed out that if she couldn't afford rent, maybe expensive equipment wasn't the best idea. She got defensive and said I didn't understand how content creation works. After that visit, I started paying closer attention. I realized that while I was covering her essentials, she was spending whatever money she did have on things related to her content. Trips for photos, props, clothes, decorations, and equipment. About 2 months ago, she called me again asking for 900 euros because she was behind on rent and her landlord had given her a warning. This time I said no. I tried to explain calmly that I'd already helped a lot and that I couldn't keep doing this indefinitely. I told her I'd be happy to help her make a budget or even help her find a job through some contacts I have. She got really quiet and then said I was abandoning her just like our parents did. That honestly stung because I had been the one keeping her afloat for over a year. A few days later, I started getting messages from our relatives. Apparently, Lena had told them that I was refusing to help her even though I was loaded and that she might lose her apartment because of me. One of my aunts even told me that family should support each other and that if I have the means, it's cruel not to help. The thing is, technically I do have the means. I could pay her rent without it ruining me financially. But at the same time, it feels like I'm enabling a situation where she never has to actually become independent. Last week, Lena sent me a long message saying that all she ever needed was a little more time and that cutting her off now could destroy everything she's been working toward. She also said that if she loses her apartment, she'll have nowhere to go and it will be my fault. Part of me feels guilty because I know she's genuinely passionate about what she's trying to do. But another part of me feels like I've already done way more than most siblings would. Now half my family thinks I'm being selfish, and the other half says I've already done enough. So AITA for refusing to keep financially supporting my sister, even though I could technically afford to? If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to give my brother the money I saved for years after he assumed I would bail him out? I, 29M, have always been the responsible one in my family. I'm the oldest of 3 siblings, and growing up my parents constantly reminded me to set a good example. My younger brother Jake, 26M, was always the opposite. He's charismatic, funny, and people love him, but he's also impulsive with money and tends to assume things will somehow work out. For the last 6 years, I've been saving aggressively to buy my first home. I live in a small apartment and have been putting aside every extra euro I can. I skip vacations, rarely eat out, and drive an old car that probably should have been replaced 2 years ago. My goal was to build a solid down payment, so I wouldn't be drowning in mortgage payments later. My family knows about this because my mom loves to bring it up during dinners. She'll say things like, "Look at Opie being so responsible, saving for his future." I always feel a little awkward about it, but I figured it was harmless. Jake, on the other hand, has had a pretty different approach to life. He changes jobs frequently, travels whenever he feels like it, and tends to spend money as soon as he gets it. For a while, he was doing rideshare driving and food delivery and seemed happy enough. About a year ago, he started talking about opening a small bar with a friend of his. Everyone thought it was one of his many ideas that would disappear after a week, but this time he actually followed through. He and his friends signed a lease on a small space and started renovating it. The thing is, Jake didn't really have much saved. Apparently his friend was putting up most of the initial investment, but Jake needed to contribute his share for equipment and licensing. For months he talked about how great the place would be and how once it opened he'd finally prove everyone wrong. I was supportive in the sense that I told him I hoped it worked out, but I never offered money or anything like that. I assumed he had a plan. Last month, he called me and asked if we could meet for coffee because he wanted to talk about something important. When we met, he looked stressed and got straight to the point. He said the renovations cost way more than expected and his friend was getting impatient because Jake hadn't come up with the rest of his share yet. Then he asked if I could temporarily loan him 30,000 euros. I almost choked on my drink. That's basically a huge chunk of my house savings. I told him there was no way I could do that. He looked genuinely surprised, like the possibility had never crossed his mind. He said he thought I'd be happy to help because I had so much saved already, and because the bar would start making money soon. He even said once the bar was successful, he'd pay me back with interest. I told him the money wasn't just sitting there for fun, it was specifically for a house down payment, and I'd worked really hard to build it up. I also said investing that much in a brand new bar run by him and a friend didn't feel like a safe bet. He got quiet for a moment and then said something that really bothered me. He said, "So you'd rather sit on your money than help your own brother start his life?" I told him that wasn't fair. I've spent years building my savings while he chose a different lifestyle. That's his choice, but it doesn't mean I'm responsible for funding his business. The conversation ended pretty awkwardly. I thought that was the end of it, but apparently he told our parents a very different version of the story. A few days later, my mom called me and said she was disappointed in me. She said Jake is finally trying to do something serious with his life, and I'm refusing to support him when I clearly have the means. She even suggested that helping him could be an investment in family. My dad was slightly less emotional, but still said that if the bar succeeds, it could change Jake's life, and I might regret not helping him when I had the chance. I told him the same thing I told Jake. That money represents years of discipline and sacrifice, and giving away 30,000 euros would set my home plans back by several years. Also, if the bar fails, I'll probably never see that money again, which could permanently affect my financial stability. Now things feel weird whenever the topic comes up. My brother has been distant with me, and my mom keeps making passive comments like family should help each other when they can. Part of me feels guilty because maybe this really is his chance to turn things around. But another part of me feels like everyone just assumed I'd be the safety net because I was responsible enough to save money in the first place. So now I'm stuck wondering if I'm being selfish or if I'm just protecting something I worked hard for. AITA? AITA for refusing to give my sister the family ring I accidentally inherited? I feel like this situation has spiraled way out of control, and now half my family thinks I'm some kind of greedy villain, so I need outside opinions. My grandmother passed away a few months ago. She had 3 kids, my mom, my aunt, and my uncle. Growing up, my grandma had this gold ring with a dark green stone that she wore almost every day. Everyone in the family knew the ring. It wasn't super expensive as far as I know, but it had sentimental value because apparently it originally belonged to my great-grandmother. Here's the thing. No one ever talked about who would get the ring. It was just Grandma's ring. After the funeral, my uncle was the one handling most of the estate stuff. My grandma didn't have a huge will with lots of details. It mostly just split money and belongings generally between her kids. Some smaller personal items were listed, but not everything. A few weeks later, my uncle invited everyone over so we could go through some of Grandma's things. It was honestly kind of emotional. There were old photos, jewelry, dishes, random knickknacks, all that stuff. At one point, my uncle handed me a small box and said, "Your grandma left this labeled for you." Inside was the green ring. I was honestly shocked. I asked if he was sure, and he showed me a little envelope that literally had my name written on it in my grandma's handwriting. Inside was the ring and a note that just said something like, "For Alex. Love you always. Grandma." I got a little emotional because my grandma and I were pretty close when I was younger. I used to stay with her a lot during summers when my parents were working. Everyone seemed fine about it at the time. My mom smiled and said Grandma must have wanted me to have it. My aunt even said it looked nice on me. Then about 2 weeks later, my sister called me. She asked if it was true that I got Grandma's ring. I said yes. She immediately got kind of quiet and then said, "You know that was supposed to come to me, right?" I had never heard that before. Apparently, my sister believes the ring was traditionally passed down to the oldest granddaughter. She's 2 years older than me, so in her mind, it should have been hers automatically. The problem is that nobody else seems to remember this tradition. My mom said she's never heard Grandma say that. My uncle said the same thing. Even my aunt said the ring had never been officially promised to anyone. But my sister insists that when she was a teenager, Grandma once told her she would probably get the ring one day. Now my sister is saying the only reason I got it is because I spent more time with Grandma in the last few years. She says Grandma might have written my name on it because she felt pressured or emotional toward the end. That honestly bothered me a lot. First of all, Grandma was mentally sharp until the very end. Second, the note wasn't written in the hospital or anything like that. My uncle said he found it in a jewelry box with other labeled items, which means Grandma probably organized it long before she got sick. Still, my sister keeps pushing. At first, she asked if I would consider doing the right thing. Then she started saying it would mean a lot to her and that the ring has always been important to her. I told her I was sorry, but Grandma literally left it to me. Now the situation has escalated. My sister told a few cousins that I took the ring even though it was meant for her. Some of them have been messaging me saying family heirlooms should stay in the traditional line. My aunt recently called me and suggested that maybe I could let my sister keep it for now to keep the peace. That suggestion honestly made me angry because it feels like once the ring leaves my possession, I'll never see it again. My mom says she supports me, but also keeps telling me that my sister is really upset and maybe I should think about how much the ring means to her. But the ring means something to me, too. It's one of the only personal things my grandma directly left me. Every time I look at it, I think about staying at her house, baking cookies, and watching old movies together. Now I feel like if I give it away, I'll regret it forever. But if I keep it, my sister might resent me for years. The worst part is she told me last week that if Grandma really meant it, she would have put it formally in the will instead of just writing my name on an envelope. That comment really stung because it feels like she's basically saying Grandma's decision doesn't count. I haven't worn the ring in weeks because I'm worried about more family drama if people see it. Part of me wonders if I'm being stubborn and selfish. Another part of me feels like honoring Grandma's note is the respectful thing to do. So now I'm stuck in the middle of a family argument over a piece of jewelry that I never even expected to have. AITA for refusing to give my sister the ring my grandmother left to me? AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding after she removed my wife from the guest list? I, 32M, have always been the responsible one in my family. I have a stable job in finance, my wife, 31F, and I own a house, and over the years I've helped my parents and siblings financially when things got tight. I never really minded because we grew up pretty modestly and I like being able to help. My younger sister, 27F, has always been a bit more impulsive. She's not a bad person, but she tends to jump into things without planning. Last year, she got engaged to her boyfriend of about 10 months. My parents were happy, but also a little nervous because neither of them is particularly financially stable. My sister works part-time, and her fiancé switches jobs a lot. About 6 months ago, she called me asking if I could help with the wedding. At first, I thought she meant helping with planning or maybe covering a small thing like flowers. Instead, she asked if I could contribute around $10,000 because they had already booked a venue and were short on the deposit. That's obviously a lot of money, but my wife and I talked about it. We could afford it without hurting ourselves financially, and I do love my sister. My only condition was that this would be our wedding gift, and I wouldn't be contributing additional money later if costs went over budget. She agreed immediately and was extremely grateful. For a while, everything seemed fine. She would occasionally send me pictures of decorations or menus she was considering. My wife was also helping her with some planning ideas and even offered to help organize the seating chart since she's good at that kind of thing. Then about 3 weeks ago, things got weird. My wife told me my sister had suddenly stopped responding to her messages. At first, we assumed she was just busy with planning. But then I received a message from my sister asking if we could talk privately. When we spoke, she sounded awkward and nervous. Eventually, she told me that her fiancé's mother was uncomfortable with my wife attending the wedding. Apparently, she believes my wife is too opinionated and would cause tension. For context, my wife and my sister's future mother-in-law met twice. The second time, they disagreed about something trivial during dinner, basically about whether couples should combine finances after marriage. It wasn't even a fight, just a disagreement. I laughed at first because I thought she was joking, but she wasn't. My sister told me her fiancé's family is paying for some parts of the wedding now, and his mother is being very involved. She said it would make things easier if my wife just didn't come. I told her that obviously wasn't going to happen. If I'm invited to a wedding, my wife is coming with me. That's basic respect. She said she understood, but asked if I could come alone, just for one day, to avoid drama. She also pointed out that the money I gave them had already been used to secure the venue and catering. That's when I started getting really annoyed. I told her that if my wife isn't welcome, then I'm not coming either. And frankly, it felt pretty insulting that the person who helped pay for the wedding was being told his spouse couldn't attend. She got upset and said I was making things harder than they needed to be. She insisted it wasn't her decision, but her future mother-in-law's. I told her that's exactly the problem. It's her wedding, not her mother-in-law's. If she's willing to exclude my wife to keep the peace, that says a lot. Then I said something that escalated things. I told her that if my wife is officially not invited, I want the money back. Maybe not immediately, but eventually. She got extremely angry and accused me of trying to ruin her wedding. She said the money was a gift and that it's unfair to take it back over a small guest list issue. Now my parents are involved. They think I should just attend alone because family is more important than pride. My sister's fiancé also messaged me saying I'm putting unnecessary stress on them. My wife, on the other hand, says she's less upset about the wedding itself and more about the principle. She thinks my sister is showing that she values her in-laws' approval more than basic respect for us. At this point, my sister has stopped talking to me entirely. The wedding is in 2 months, and apparently they're scrambling to figure out finances in case I really do push for repayment. I honestly didn't intend to create a huge family conflict, but the more I think about it, the more disrespectful the whole situation feels. If someone helped fund your wedding, telling them their spouse can't attend seems incredibly rude. Still, my parents say I'm escalating things and risking long-term damage with my sister over something that could be solved by me just showing up alone for a few hours. So now I'm wondering if I'm being stubborn about this. AITA? AITA for refusing to give my brother the family house even though everyone expected me to? I'm 32M, and my younger brother Ryan is 28M. Growing up, our family had what everyone called the family house. It's a small 2-story house in a quiet neighborhood that my grandparents bought in the 1970s. Every holiday happened there. Birthdays, Christmas, random Sunday dinners, all of it. My grandparents passed away about 10 years ago, and the house went to my dad. My dad always joked that the house would stay in the family forever. He was the type who liked traditions and stability. My brother and I both grew up assuming that someday one of us would end up living there. Here's where things start getting messy. Ryan has always been the golden child. Not in a cruel way exactly, but he was the charming one. He's outgoing, funny, and people naturally gravitate toward him. I'm the quiet, responsible one. The running joke in the family is that Ryan brings the fun and I bring the spreadsheets. Ryan moved out at 19, bounced between jobs, traveled a lot, and generally lived pretty freely. I went to college, got a stable job in finance, and have been working at the same company for 8 years. I'm married to my wife, and I have a 2-year-old daughter. 2 years ago, my dad got sick. It wasn't sudden, but it progressed faster than anyone expected. During that time, I ended up handling most of the practical stuff. Hospital paperwork, bills, insurance calls, repairs around the house, all of it. Ryan visited a lot and was emotionally supportive, but the logistical side mostly fell on me. Before my dad passed, he updated his will. The house was left to me. When the lawyer read it, I was surprised. I actually assumed the house would go to Ryan because he loved it more. He always talked about how he wanted to raise kids there someday. The will didn't say anything complicated. The house simply went to me, and Ryan received some money my dad had saved along with the car. At first, Ryan seemed fine about it. He even said it made sense since I was the responsible one. But things changed a few months later. Ryan and his girlfriend announced they were expecting a baby. Suddenly, the conversation about the house started again. At a family dinner, my mom casually said something like, "Well, maybe Ryan can move into the house now that he's starting a family." I reminded her that my wife and I were actually planning to move there ourselves. Our apartment is getting cramped with the baby, and the house has a yard. My mom looked surprised and said she assumed we'd just keep renting it out or something. Ryan didn't say much that night, but the next day, he called me. He basically asked if I'd be willing to let him take over the house. His argument was that he had always dreamed of living there and start his family there. He said since I could technically afford to buy another place, it would mean more to him. I told him I understood the sentimental value, but it meant a lot to me too. It's our grandparents' house, and more importantly, my dad chose to leave it to me. Ryan then suggested that maybe I could sell it to him for a really low price or just transfer ownership since he didn't have much saved yet. I asked him how he planned to afford the upkeep, taxes, and repairs if he couldn't afford the house itself. That apparently made him feel insulted. Since then, my extended family has started getting involved. My aunt called me, saying that Ryan has always been more emotionally connected to the house. My mom says that technically it's mine, but keeping it away from Ryan might damage the family. Even my cousin messaged me, saying I should consider what my grandparents would have wanted. The weird part is that nobody seems to question that my wife and daughter would also be living there. It's like they see it as Ryan's house that just temporarily passed through me. Ryan and I had a pretty heated argument last week. He said I'm prioritizing property over family and that I'm being selfish. I said that if the roles were reversed, I doubt he'd give it to me. He didn't deny that, which honestly made the conversation worse. My wife thinks the whole situation is ridiculous and that we should move in as planned. She says my dad made the decision intentionally and that it's unfair for everyone to pressure me into undoing it. Part of me feels guilty, though. Ryan really does love that house. I know he pictured his future there for years. But at the same time, I handled so much for my dad near the end, and the house is legally mine. Now my mom says if I move in, Ryan might not come to family holidays anymore, because it'll hurt too much. So now I'm stuck wondering if holding onto the house is reasonable, or if I'm actually tearing the family apart over it. AITA? AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding at my house, even though she says I'm being selfish. I, 32F, have always been the organized, responsible one in my family. I live in a modest but very cozy 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood, and I work long hours as a software engineer. My younger sister, Lily, 28F, is the opposite, spontaneous, dramatic, and always the center of attention. Despite our differences, we have a close relationship, or at least I thought we did. Recently, Lily got engaged to her fiancé, Tom, 30M, who is very sweet but not very practical. They came to me excitedly a few months ago and said they wanted to have a small, intimate wedding with just family and close friends. Then, out of nowhere, Lily said, "We want to have it at your house." My first reaction was shock. My house is not a wedding venue. It's a small 3-bedroom home with a living room that barely fits my sectional sofa. I asked her if she was joking, and she insisted she was serious. She explained that she loves my backyard and thinks it would be perfect for a summer wedding. She also said it would save money, and since I have a big kitchen, it could accommodate catering prep. I told her that while I understand the sentiment, I don't feel comfortable hosting an event of that magnitude in my personal space. I also reminded her that I live alone, and I would have to rearrange furniture, clean constantly, and deal with guests in close quarters. Lily said I was being ridiculous and that it wouldn't be that bad. I tried to compromise by suggesting alternative venues nearby, like a local community hall or a small garden park, which would still feel intimate but wouldn't require turning my home into a temporary event space. Lily reacted badly, saying those places are too boring and impersonal. She then started guilt-tripping me, saying that if I loved her, I would do this for her because it's her dream wedding. I offered a middle ground where I could help with decorations, logistics, and even organizing the catering, but the actual ceremony should be somewhere else. Lily refused. She said, "It's just your house for one day. What's the big deal?" I explained that it's not just one day. There's preparation, setup, and cleanup, which could take days. Plus, I'm uncomfortable having strangers in my private space, and I don't want to deal with potential damage or noise complaints from neighbors. The tension escalated when she started bringing up past favors. She said things like, "Remember when I helped you move? Or when I lent you money for your car?" implying that I owe her. I reminded her that those were normal sibling things and don't equate to hosting a wedding in my home. She called me selfish multiple times, saying I only think about myself and never support her dreams. A few days later, our parents got involved. They called me and told me that I should consider Lily's feelings and that it would be a wonderful gesture to let her have her special day at my house. I felt cornered. I asked them if they would host a wedding at their house for me without discussion, and they admitted they wouldn't. That made me question if everyone was taking her side just because she's dramatic rather than considering the practical side of the request. I finally had a calm conversation with Lily, explaining my boundaries clearly. I said, "I want to help you, but I cannot host your wedding at my house. I will help you with planning, decorations, and even scouting venues, but this is not happening here." Lily got extremely upset, accused me of being selfish, and said I was ruining her dream wedding. She threatened that she might not invite me to the wedding if I don't relent. I stood firm. I feel like this isn't about being supportive. It's about her wanting me to bend my life and space to her desires. I love her and want her to have a beautiful day, but I also need to protect my boundaries and my home. She keeps texting me guilt-laden messages about how I don't care about family and how I've always been selfish. Other relatives have started weighing in too. Some say I should just let her have it, because weddings are special and once-in-a-lifetime events. Others understand my hesitation and say it's reasonable to say no. My friends are fully on my side, saying hosting a wedding in a small personal home is a huge ask, especially for someone who lives alone. I honestly don't know if I'm overreacting. I'm trying to balance being supportive with maintaining my personal space and sanity. Hosting a wedding at my home feels intrusive and stressful, not celebratory. I'm fully willing to help financially, logistically, or even by lending my house for pre-wedding photos or small gatherings. But the main ceremony and reception cannot happen here. So, AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding at my house. Even though she claims I'm being selfish and not supportive, I want to support her without sacrificing my boundaries. But I feel like everyone around me thinks I'm being the villain for standing my ground. AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend move in with me after she insisted it would be fine. A little background. I, 28F, live in a 2-bedroom apartment in a moderately expensive part of the city. I work from home as a graphic designer, so having my own space and quiet is really important to me. My sister, Emily, 26F, has been dating her boyfriend, Jake, 27M, for about a year. When they first started dating, things seemed fine. Jake was charming, funny, and seemed genuinely interested in Emily's happiness. I got along with him well enough, though I've always been a bit cautious because I tend to be private and reserved. Fast forward to last month, Emily called me up in a panic. She explained that her apartment had a major leak that would take a few weeks to fix and that she and Jake had nowhere to stay. She asked if Jake could crash at my place temporarily while they figure things out. I was caught off guard because she specifically said Jake, not both of us, which I found odd. I asked her why she couldn't stay too, and she said her lease prohibited subletting and she didn't want to get in trouble. At first, I felt guilty. I knew they were in a tough spot. But as soon as I thought about it, I realized having a stranger, albeit my sister's boyfriend, in my apartment for weeks was a big deal. My apartment is small, my work setup requires focus, and I'm extremely particular about cleanliness and routines. I told Emily that I might be able to help, but I needed a few details first. How long exactly would he stay? What would he be bringing? How would this affect my daily routine? Emily brushed past my questions and said, "It'll just be a couple of weeks. Jake is super easygoing, you'll see, it won't be a big deal. You're being dramatic." I tried to explain that even a couple of weeks could disrupt my life significantly because I work from home and have strict deadlines. She told me I was overreacting and that Jake is basically a perfect house guest. I started feeling uncomfortable, but I also didn't want to upset her. When I told Jake directly that I was hesitant, he seemed genuinely disappointed. He said he could stay anywhere, but Emily really thought my place would be easiest. I explained my boundaries. I can't have someone else in my space for multiple weeks because of my work, my sleep schedule, and personal habits. I suggested he could look into a short-term Airbnb or a friend who lives closer to his job. Jake nodded politely but said, "I get it, but Emily is stressed, and she really hoped you'd help." Emily didn't take my refusal well. She started sending texts like, "You're my sister. Why wouldn't you help me? Jake is going to be sleeping on the floor, or worse, at a friend's place, and it's all your fault." She accused me of being selfish, uncaring, and overly rigid. I tried to explain again that this isn't personal. It's about my living situation and professional obligations. She said, "You always prioritize work over family. Maybe you care more about your apartment than me." The conflict escalated when she began bringing up past instances where she thought I should have helped her, but didn't. She mentioned a time when she was moving apartments and I didn't help her pack, which was a misunderstanding. I had offered to help on the weekend, but she needed help during the week when I was working. She framed it as me being consistently unsupportive. At this point, I felt trapped in a guilt spiral because I don't like confrontation, but I also knew I couldn't compromise my boundaries. I proposed a compromise. I offered to let Jake stay for one night if he was truly in a bind, and I would help him find temporary housing, cover part of the cost, or drive him to his new location. Emily refused and said, "One night isn't enough. You're making me choose between family and work, and it shouldn't be this hard." I felt like anything I suggested was unacceptable to her. A few days later, she started posting on social media about family who refuses to help in times of need, and tagged mutual friends in indirect complaints about me. I didn't respond publicly because I didn't want to escalate things further. In private messages, she continued to guilt-trip me, bringing up our childhood and emphasizing how we're supposed to have each other's backs. Meanwhile, Jake ended up staying at a cheap motel for 2 weeks, which Emily keeps reminding me about in every call. She tells me he was uncomfortable and didn't sleep well, which makes me feel guilty, but I also remember that I explicitly stated I couldn't accommodate him for that long. My friends are divided. Some say I'm completely justified because it's my home and I shouldn't feel obligated to host someone who isn't family by blood, while others say I should have made more sacrifices to help my sister in a stressful situation. The tension between Emily and me hasn't cooled. She now refuses to speak to me unless it's to bring up Jake's ordeal, and I can feel our relationship changing. I try to talk to her calmly about boundaries, but she interprets it as me being cold and selfish. I genuinely don't want to lose my sister, but I also feel I need to protect my living situation and mental health. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend stay in my apartment for several weeks, even though she said it was urgent. I feel like my boundaries are reasonable, but the way she's framing it makes me question if I'm being selfish. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after a decade-long family feud. I, 32F, have always had a complicated relationship with my sister, Lisa, 35F. Growing up, we were close at first, sharing rooms, secrets, and school projects. But as we got older, things began to shift. Lisa became increasingly competitive and judgmental, while I tended to be more easygoing and private. By the time we were teenagers, arguments were frequent, ranging from small disagreements about chores to intense fights over personal choices. The breaking point came when I was 22. I had just graduated from college and landed a decent job in a city a few hours away. Lisa, meanwhile, was pursuing a career in a field I had little interest in, and she constantly belittled my choices. During a particularly heated argument about our parents' estate, our father had recently passed away, Lisa accused me of being selfish and manipulative. I retaliated by bringing up things from her past she had never wanted discussed in front of our extended family. The fight escalated to the point that both of us said things we deeply regretted. Our parents tried to mediate, but neither of us was willing to back down. For months afterward, communication was limited to obligatory texts on birthdays and holidays. Eventually, we stopped speaking entirely. For the next 10 years, our family relationships were fractured. My parents were always disappointed, but avoided forcing contact, respecting our wishes. I focused on building my life, career, friendships, and eventually my own family. I got married 5 years ago to my husband, Mark, 34M, and we have a 3-year-old daughter, Emily. Life was generally peaceful, though there was always an underlying sadness about the estrangement with my sister. Recently, Lisa announced her engagement to her fiancé, Tom, 36M. She sent a formal wedding invitation addressed to me, with a note asking me to attend and try to move past the past for the sake of family. I was taken aback. On one hand, I wanted to be the bigger person and make peace, especially for Emily's sake. On the other hand, the thought of sitting in the same room with someone who had caused me so much pain and never truly apologized felt overwhelming. I considered attending, hoping perhaps this could be a fresh start, but I struggled with the emotional weight. I confided in my parents, who were supportive of me but subtly pressured me to attend. They reminded me that weddings are supposed to be happy occasions and that Lisa deserved some reconciliation. I told them I couldn't guarantee I'd be able to hold my composure and that attending might reopen old wounds. They eventually backed off, but I could tell they were disappointed. I also talked with Mark. He was understanding, agreeing that my mental and emotional health should come first. He suggested that if I felt attending would be too damaging, I could politely decline while sending a thoughtful gift. Emily, being 3, wouldn't understand the dynamics, but Mark also noted that our daughter would see me modeling boundaries and self-respect. After much deliberation, I drafted a heartfelt letter to Lisa. I explained that while I wished her happiness, I could not attend the wedding. I acknowledged the pain from our past and expressed hope that someday we might reconnect under healthier circumstances. I sent the letter along with a generous gift for both her and Tom. The response was immediate and, frankly, hurtful. Lisa accused me of holding a grudge, being selfish, and not caring about family. She wrote that I was choosing resentment over love, and that my refusal would be remembered forever. Our parents were caught in the middle. They were sympathetic, but tried to convince me again to attend, warning that this decision might permanently damage our family relationships. Extended family members started asking questions, some subtly blaming me for the continued tension. I've been called names like cold and heartless by relatives who didn't understand the history. A few friends suggested I reconsider and just be there for a few hours to avoid family drama. But I keep returning to the emotional impact of that decade-long feud. Sitting through a wedding where I would be constantly on edge, forced into interactions I'm not ready for, doesn't feel like reconciliation. It feels like self-harm. The situation escalated when Lisa posted about her wedding on social media. She included pictures with captions implying that everyone important would be there, which felt like a public jab. I chose not to engage online. My parents are frustrated, my extended family is taking sides, and Lisa's fiancé has expressed confusion and disappointment about my absence, though he has been polite. Since sending the letter, I've noticed a mix of reactions. Some people in my life have been supportive, saying I did the right thing, prioritizing my emotional health. Others have suggested that this refusal could haunt me in future family events and milestones. I'm torn because I hate feeling like the villain, but I also know that attending could reopen trauma I've spent years trying to heal from. I don't know if I'm overreacting or if I'm justified. I genuinely want a future relationship with Lisa, but I'm not ready for the intensity and the potential emotional damage that attending her wedding might bring. I also want to model healthy boundaries for Emily. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding despite family pressure, after a decade-long feud and emotional trauma that hasn't been resolved? Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she accused me of ruining her special day over a harmless joke? This all started about a year ago when my sister, Emily, got engaged to her fiancé, Mark. I was genuinely happy for them, but I also knew that planning a wedding was going to be stressful for Emily because she has a very particular way she wants things done. I've always been close to Emily, but sometimes her perfectionism can make even small mistakes feel like huge disasters. A few weeks into the wedding planning, Emily and I went shopping for bridesmaid dresses. I was paired with her two best friends, Jenna and Sarah. While we were looking at fabric swatches, I jokingly said, honestly, if the color is anything other than blush, we might as well all wear clown suits. You'd make the wedding look like a circus. I thought it was lighthearted, and Jenna and Sarah laughed along with me. Emily, however, did not. She turned red, snapped, and said, I cannot believe you would say that. This is my wedding, not a joke factory. I apologized immediately, told her I didn't mean it, and tried to move on. Fast forward 3 months. Emily had chosen the perfect theme, the perfect dresses, the perfect flowers, and everything seemed to be on track. I was helping her with DIY decorations, which involved hours of cutting, gluing, and arranging. We had fun, laughing, and making small talk about her relationship and future plans. Then, during one of these sessions, I accidentally spilled some glitter on the new carpet in her living room. It was just a small amount, but Emily acted like it was the end of the world. She screamed at me, saying, I can't believe you're so careless. This is exactly why I didn't want you helping. I apologized, grabbed a vacuum, and cleaned as best as I could, but she remained upset for hours. Things started to feel tense after that. Every time I offered help, Emily seemed to find a reason to criticize me, whether it was how I folded napkins, the way I arranged the centerpieces, or even my choice of shoes when she asked me to run errands. I tried to step back, thinking that maybe she just needed space, but she began making snide comments in front of other family members like, well, at least not everyone is as messy as someone I know, clearly referring to me. I tried to brush it off, but it stung. 2 weeks before the wedding, Emily sent me a list of what she wanted me to do the day of the wedding. It was extremely detailed, down to the second I was supposed to hand her the bouquet. I told her I could do it, but that I might be a little nervous because I was not used to that level of responsibility. She replied, nervous? You should be. You're either perfect or you ruin everything. Don't embarrass me in front of my guests. I felt like she was crossing a line, and I told her I didn't want to be treated like a child on our wedding day. Then came the big confrontation. A week before the wedding, my partner, Alex, and I were visiting Emily and Mark to drop off a gift and say hello. Emily was in full wedding stress mode, and we were just chatting about small things. I made a joke about her flowers. Are we going with roses? Or is it going to be a field of sunflowers for the clown vibe? I honestly thought Emily would laugh or roll her eyes. Instead, she stormed out of the room, came back with Mark, and said, I can't believe you. You're literally trying to ruin my wedding. I don't want you there. You've crossed the line one too many times. I was shocked. I tried to explain that it was just a joke, that I had been helping nonstop, and that I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. Mark told me calmly that Emily was too stressed and emotional to hear anything right now, and maybe it was better if I didn't come to the wedding. I left, feeling completely blindsided and hurt. Since then, the family has been split. My parents have tried to mediate, but Emily insists that I should apologize again and promise to behave perfectly or stay home. I don't feel like I did anything worth being banned from a family event, especially since I've been helping for months and never did anything intentionally harmful. I reached out to Emily one more time to say I was sorry if I offended her and that I hope we could work things out, but she refused to respond. Some family members think I'm overreacting and should just attend the wedding to avoid drama. Others agree that Emily's reaction seems extreme. I really don't want to create more tension, but at the same time, I feel like being told I am ruining the wedding over a harmless joke is unfair. Now I'm debating whether to show up or stay home. If I go, I might feel unwelcome, but if I don't, some family members might see me as the bad person. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she accused me of ruining it with a harmless joke, even though I've helped her extensively with planning and preparations. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of my parents' behavior. This all started about 6 months ago when my sister, Emily, got engaged to her long-term boyfriend, Jason. I was genuinely happy for her at first, but as the wedding planning started, things quickly spiraled into a nightmare. My parents, who are usually the picture of ideal family on social media, have a long history of being controlling and manipulative, and it turns out nothing about this wedding was going to be different. Emily is the eldest child, and I'm the youngest. I've always been more of an introvert, while Emily was the golden child. Our parents have made that very clear over the years. From a young age, Emily was praised for everything she did: good grades, sports, extracurriculars, while I was often overlooked or criticized for minor mistakes. I thought I had moved past that, but the wedding planning has made me realize that some wounds never really heal. The first red flag came when Emily casually mentioned that she wanted a small, intimate wedding, mostly family and a few close friends. I thought this was reasonable and completely in line with what she's always wanted. But my parents immediately insisted that it needed to be grand and impressive because it would reflect on the family. They started pushing for a huge guest list, a fancy venue, and even suggested we hire a wedding consultant to make sure everything looked perfect. I could see Emily getting stressed, but she didn't want to upset them, so she started going along with their ideas. The second issue was with the guest list. I have a few friends who are extremely important to me, people I've known for over a decade. When I asked if they could be invited, my parents scoffed and said, well, they aren't really family, and we already have a lot of people we know will make the wedding look better. Essentially, my parents were trying to control who could and couldn't be there, including my own close friends. I mentioned this to Emily, and she agreed that it was ridiculous but felt trapped because of my parents' insistence. Things got worse when my parents started helping with wedding planning. My mom has a history of passive-aggressive behavior, and my dad is manipulative in a more subtle, calculating way. They started inserting themselves into every decision Emily made. If she wanted a certain type of flower for the bouquet, my mom would suggest a more expensive option and make Emily feel guilty for not going along. If Jason suggested anything, my dad would find a way to subtly undermine him, claiming that we know best because we've been married longer. Emily was visibly anxious every time she tried to make a choice. The whole situation made me uncomfortable because I could see her slowly losing control over her own wedding. I tried to step in and support Emily. I suggested we set boundaries with our parents, and I offered to talk to them privately. However, my parents were not receptive. They acted like I was being dramatic and accused me of trying to start a fight or turn Emily against them. They also implied that I was jealous of Emily and that my objections were purely selfish. Honestly, I just wanted the wedding to reflect Emily and Jason's wishes, not my parents' idea of perfection. As the wedding date approached, my parents' behavior escalated. They started sending me long, passive-aggressive texts about how I should be more involved and appreciate the honor of being family. They also made multiple comments about how my outfit for the wedding needs to be perfect and that I should avoid bringing any of my friends who aren't officially recognized as part of the family. I felt trapped and extremely stressed. Every time I tried to speak up, they turned it around on me, making me feel like the bad guy. A month before the wedding, Emily had a breakdown. She called me in tears, saying she felt like she couldn't make any decisions without my parents dictating the outcome. She said she wanted me there, but she also knew I disliked the way our parents treated me and her. I tried to reassure her and suggested maybe we could talk to my parents together to set some boundaries, but she was too scared. She didn't want to ruin the relationship she has with them, and I didn't want to put her in that position either. It was a lose-lose situation. At this point, I realized attending the wedding might do more harm than good. I felt that my parents' presence and manipulations would overshadow the entire day, and I didn't want to witness Emily's special day being overtaken by their controlling behavior. I also recognized that attending might give them an opportunity to target me, criticize my choices, and ruin the experience for me emotionally. After many sleepless nights and long conversations with a therapist, I made the decision to not attend. I explained to Emily that my absence didn't mean I didn't care, but that I needed to protect my own mental health and boundaries. I informed my parents of my decision a few weeks ago. Predictably, they were furious. My mom sent me a 2-page text accusing me of being selfish and ruining the family's reputation. My dad called me and said that by not attending, I was making Emily feel abandoned. They insisted that I was overreacting and that it was just one day, to be polite and supportive. I tried to explain that the issues weren't about the wedding itself, but about the repeated toxic behavior and lack of respect for me and my friends. They didn't accept that and have since been cold toward me. Emily has been caught in the middle, feeling guilty and confused, but she hasn't tried to convince me either way. Now, I'm starting to get backlash from extended family who are aware of my decision. Some have said I'm being dramatic, selfish, or that I owe it to Emily to be there. Others are supportive and understand that family dynamics can be complicated. I still feel strongly that attending the wedding would be harmful to my mental health, and I want to maintain my boundaries with my parents, but the guilt is eating at me. I want to support Emily, but I'm struggling to figure out the right way to do so from a distance. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of my parents' toxic behavior and their attempts to control every aspect of the day. I feel like I'm making a necessary choice for my mental health, but the backlash and guilt are heavy, and I'm wondering if I'm wrong for putting myself first in this situation. AITA for refusing to let my sister stay with me after her divorce. AITA for not letting my sister, Amy, move in with me after her divorce. This has been weighing heavily on me for weeks, and I genuinely need an outsider's perspective because my family is extremely divided on this issue. To give some background, I'm 34, single, and work as a software engineer. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment in the city I've always dreamed of living in. My sister, Amy, is 31, and she recently finalized her divorce from her husband, Mark, after 10 years of marriage. They have no children, which, honestly, makes this entire situation slightly simpler, but still emotionally complicated. A few weeks ago, Amy called me in tears, explaining that she had nowhere to go. Mark had asked her to move out immediately, and she didn't have any friends in town who could take her in. She sounded desperate, and part of me immediately wanted to help her. I love my sister, and seeing her hurt broke my heart. But then reality hit me. My apartment is tiny, and while I could squeeze her in temporarily, I know my living situation is not ideal for 2 people long-term. My second bedroom is actually my home office, which I rely on for remote work. The thought of giving that up for an undefined period made me anxious. I told Amy I could help in other ways. I offered to lend her some money to get a short-term rental, help her pack, or even help her find a new apartment. She seemed hurt, but agreed to consider it. That's when things got complicated. A week later, Amy showed up at my door with just a few bags, insisting that she couldn't afford anything else and needed to stay just until she got back on her feet. I tried to explain that my apartment wasn't really set up for another person to live here comfortably. I also mentioned that I had work obligations and a demanding schedule. She started crying and said she thought family was supposed to support each other no matter what. I felt guilty because I didn't want her to feel abandoned. After some tense back and forth, I agreed to let her stay for one night. That night was stressful. She stayed up late watching TV in the living room, eating my food without asking, and being generally loud. I work from home, and I had an early meeting the next morning. I tried to ask her to keep it down, and she got defensive, saying I didn't understand what she was going through. I know she was going through a lot, but I also felt like my boundaries were being ignored. The next day, I told her that one night was all I could realistically offer. I suggested she start looking for a temporary rental immediately. She got upset and accused me of turning my back on her in her time of need. I tried to explain that I still wanted to help in other ways, but she refused to accept my offers. She kept insisting that staying with me was the only viable option because I had more space than she did. Things escalated when our parents got involved. They called me and said I was being unreasonable and unkind. My mom told me that family is supposed to be there for each other no matter what. My dad agreed, although he said he understood I had obligations. Amy, feeling supported by them, started sending me texts several times a day asking when she could move in and reminding me of all the sacrifices she had made for me in the past. She even mentioned some old incidents where I borrowed her car or took her clothes without asking, framing it as though I owed her now. I try to maintain my boundaries, but my parents pressured me relentlessly. My friends have mixed opinions too. Some say I should absolutely let her stay, even if it's inconvenient because family comes first. Others say I have every right to say no, especially because my own mental health and living situation are at stake. I suggested a compromise. I would help her find a short-term Airbnb or sublet and cover part of the cost. I also offered to drive her around, help her pack, and be available for emotional support. She flatly refused. She said it wasn't enough, and that only living with me would solve her problem. I tried to reason with her, saying that adding someone permanently to my apartment would affect my work, my social life, and my sanity. She called me selfish and told me she didn't want a temporary fix but real family support. The situation has now reached a stalemate. My parents are upset with me. My sister is hurt and resentful, and I'm feeling guilty every single day. I feel like if I let her stay, it would compromise my life significantly. But if I don't, she might feel completely abandoned. My own friends are divided, and even some of my coworkers know about the drama because she's reached out to them as well, asking for advice. I should note that I genuinely want my sister to succeed and feel supported. I've already helped her financially, emotionally, and with logistics. I'm just not sure how much more I can give without compromising my own well-being. The thought of her moving in permanently terrifies me because I rely heavily on my home setup for work, and my social life is already somewhat limited in the city. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister stay with me indefinitely after her divorce. I'm torn between doing what feels compassionate and protecting my own life and space. I feel like I'm trapped between guilt, family expectations, and my personal boundaries, and I honestly don't know what the right decision is. I haven't spoken to Amy much in the last week. I feel anxious every time my phone buzzes because I don't know if it's another text from her or my parents. I don't want to feel like the bad person in this scenario, but I also don't want to compromise my life entirely for someone else, even if they are my sister. I've considered therapy to help navigate this boundary setting, but I'm also aware that the family drama is escalating faster than I can manage. Every day feels like a moral tug-of-war. I love my sister and want her to be safe and supported, but I also feel that her living with me indefinitely is not realistic or healthy for either of us. I'm not sure if I'm being selfish or if this is a reasonable stance. I just want to do what's best without causing irreparable damage to our relationship. So, Reddit AITA for saying no? AITA for refusing to let my sister's kids stay with me for a month despite her emergency? I, 32F, live in a modest two-bedroom apartment in a mid-sized city. I work full-time as a software developer, and, aside from my partner, 35M, I live alone. I enjoy a relatively quiet life, and I like my routines. My younger sister, Jenna, 28F, lives about an hour away with her husband, Mark, 30M, and their two kids, Lily, 6F, and Noah, 4M. Over the years, I've been very involved with my nieces and nephews, often babysitting or taking them for short weekends when my sister needed a break, and I've always done it willingly. Last week, I got a frantic call from Jenna. She and Mark have been arguing a lot lately, mostly about finances and household responsibilities. She claimed that Mark lost it again and she needed to leave the house immediately with the kids. Jenna told me she was going to drop them off at my apartment for a month or until things calmed down, and she expected me to just say yes. She was crying on the phone and said she couldn't stay another night with him. I was shocked and felt a mix of panic and anger. I didn't have any time to mentally prepare for having two energetic kids for that long, and my apartment is not exactly child-proofed for an extended stay. I have one bedroom, that's ours, and another small room with a sofa bed, which would have to serve as the kids' bedroom. My living space is already tight, and a month would be a huge disruption to my work-from-home routine. I tried to explain to Jenna that I couldn't have them for an entire month. I said I could babysit for a few hours or a weekend if needed, but a month was not something I could manage. Jenna immediately got defensive and started accusing me of not loving my nieces and nephews. She said things like, "If you cared about family, you wouldn't hesitate," and "I'm desperate, and you're the only person I can rely on right now." I reminded her that I love them very much, but loving them doesn't mean I can drop everything in my life and take on a month-long responsibility without planning or warning. The conversation quickly escalated. Jenna said she would figure it out herself, which I assumed meant she was planning to show up at my door anyway. She also mentioned that Mark had refused to take the kids elsewhere, so it really was all on me. I felt cornered, and my partner suggested we set firm boundaries. We told her no, politely but firmly, that our apartment is not equipped for a month-long stay and that she would need to make other arrangements. Jenna didn't take it well. She started texting me multiple times a day, alternating between crying messages about how the kids were scared and angry texts accusing me of abandoning her in her time of need. I did some research and called a few local friends and family members, explaining the situation and asked if anyone could take the kids temporarily. A few of my cousins offered to help for short periods, but no one could commit to a full month. I also suggested to Jenna that she consider a short-term childcare service or see if her sister-in-law could help. Jenna called me a few days later, furious, saying that no one cared about her or the kids, and that I was the only person she trusted. She implied that if I didn't let them stay, she would just drop them off anyway. I refused to let her do that. I told her firmly that if she attempted to leave them at my door without my consent, I would have to involve the authorities because I couldn't have two kids unsupervised and unplanned for an extended period. She hung up on me, and I haven't spoken to her directly since. The kids are currently with their parents, who live about 2 hours away, but Jenna keeps texting me, guilt-tripping me about letting them down. My partner thinks I did the right thing by setting boundaries. He pointed out that a month-long stay without warning would be incredibly disruptive and that it's unfair for me to be held responsible for their family issues. Some mutual friends, however, have started messaging me privately, saying that I should have stepped up and that family comes first. A few even implied that I was selfish and uncaring. I keep thinking about Lily and Noah, and part of me feels guilty, but I also know that I would have been overwhelmed and possibly resentful if I had agreed to take them. I've tried to offer support in other ways, like scheduling video calls with the kids, offering to babysit on weekends, and helping Jenna brainstorm temporary childcare options. I even offered to drive them to local cousins for a weekend visit to give Jenna some breathing room. But none of that seems to satisfy her. I'm torn because I genuinely care about my nieces and nephews and want to be there for them. But I also feel like this situation was unreasonable and forced me into a position where my own life and responsibilities would have been upended. I worry that refusing has caused a rift in my relationship with Jenna and could damage my bond with the kids. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to let my sister's kids stay with me for a month, even though she claimed it was an emergency. AITA for refusing to babysit my niece after my sister's repeated manipulations. I, 32F, have a younger sister, Emily, 28F, who has a daughter, Sophie, 6F. I've always had a complicated relationship with Emily. We were close growing up, but since we both became adults, our relationship has been strained, mostly because she has a habit of guilt-tripping me into doing things I don't want to do. A few years ago, I moved to a different city for work, and Emily stayed in her hometown. Because of the distance, I'm not a daily part of Sophie's life, but I do try to keep in touch and see her during holidays or special occasions. When Sophie was born, I was excited to be an aunt, but Emily quickly made it clear that she expected me to babysit whenever she needed a break. At first, I didn't mind, but over time it became clear that she assumed I was always available. About a year ago, I agreed to babysit Sophie for a weekend while Emily went on a short trip with friends. It was exhausting but manageable. After that weekend, Emily began to drop hints constantly about how difficult it was for her to manage Sophie on her own. Every few weeks, she'd ask me to take Sophie for a day or an afternoon. I started noticing that she never really thanked me. Instead, she would frame it as if I was letting her down whenever I said no. Last month, Emily sent me a message saying she had an important work event and needed me to take care of Sophie for 2 nights. I explained that I had a lot of deadlines and couldn't get time off from work. Her response was a long text about how Sophie misses me, how lonely she would be, and how I never help when it really counts. I tried to be firm and said I couldn't do it. The next day, Emily called me, and the conversation escalated. She said that I was selfish and not family-oriented, and implied that my career was more important than my niece's happiness. I reminded her that I love Sophie and enjoy spending time with her, but I also have boundaries and responsibilities. She accused me of being cold and not understanding the struggles of parenthood. A few days later, Emily posted on social media about how much she sacrifices for her daughter and how family should support each other. She didn't tag me, but it was clear to me she was referring to our argument. A mutual friend commented asking why I wasn't helping, and I ignored it. Emily then started sending me messages asking why I was letting friends shame me and why I wouldn't step up as an aunt. This brings me to the present. Yesterday, Emily sent a frantic message saying she had a last-minute work trip and needed me to watch Sophie for the week. I was honest again and said I couldn't commit because of my work and other personal obligations. She responded by saying I don't love Sophie enough to make sacrifices for her, that I'm letting her down in a way that could affect her emotionally. She even suggested that Sophie might be upset or confused about why I wouldn't come. I'm not sure what to do. I feel guilty because Sophie is my niece, and I genuinely like spending time with her, but Emily's constant pressure makes me feel manipulated rather than helpful. I tried explaining that I can babysit sometimes, but need to be asked with reasonable notice and that it's not fair for her to assume I'm always available. Emily didn't accept that and call me selfish again. My parents are involved as well. They support Emily's situation, saying I should help more because it's family, and they keep implying that I'm creating tension between the sisters. My friends, on the other hand, think Emily is manipulative and that I'm justified in setting boundaries. The situation has escalated to the point where I dread talking to Emily. I don't want to completely cut ties because I do care about my niece, but I also don't want to be guilt-tripped into doing something I'm uncomfortable with. I've considered offering to take Sophie for an occasional weekend that fits my schedule, but I worry that Emily will continue to push and I'll end up feeling resentful. I've also thought about suggesting professional childcare options, but Emily refuses to spend money on a babysitter, claiming it's unnecessary because she has family available. She views it as my responsibility as an aunt to help out whenever needed. I understand that family support is important, but I feel like Emily's expectations are unrealistic and that her guilt-tripping is manipulative. I want to be there for my niece without letting Emily's behavior control my life. At the same time, I feel a lot of pressure from my parents and others to conform to her demands. So, AITA for refusing to babysit my niece on short notice and for not giving in to Emily's guilt trips, even though it upsets her and others in the family. I'm struggling to find a balance between being a supportive aunt and maintaining my own boundaries. Has anyone dealt with this kind of family pressure before? I'm trying to be fair, but I also don't want to lose myself in constant demands. AITA for refusing to help my sister move when she demanded I take care of her kids. So, this happened over the last weekend, but I think the tension has been building for a long time. I, 32F, have a younger sister, Emma, 28F, and we have a complicated relationship. Growing up, I was the responsible big sister, and she was the free spirit. Our parents always leaned on me for everything from babysitting to helping with her schoolwork, and honestly, I never minded too much at the time because it felt natural. But now, I feel like the dynamic hasn't changed, and it frustrates me. Emma recently decided to move across the city to a bigger apartment because she felt her current place was stifling. She has 2 kids, Sam, 6M, and Lily, 3F, and a part-time job that doesn't cover much. She called me on Friday afternoon, clearly stressed, and said, "I really need your help this weekend with the move. You can watch the kids while I handle packing and logistics, and I'd really appreciate it if you could do this without complaint. I know it's a lot, but you're my only option." I paused because I had plans that weekend. I was going to attend a local photography workshop that I had paid for months in advance and was really looking forward to. I explained this to Emma and suggested, "I can help you pack a few boxes on Friday evening, but I can't watch the kids all weekend because of the workshop." She immediately got defensive and said, "That's ridiculous. I've helped you with things before, and now you're just refusing to step up when I need you? You're supposed to be family." I tried to calmly reason with her, saying that helping with a move is one thing, but asking me to take full responsibility for 2 kids for the entire weekend when I had prior commitments is not fair. She said I was being selfish and that my responsibilities were not more important than her needs. By Saturday morning, she started sending a ton of texts asking why I wasn't there yet, and I responded that I wasn't coming for full childcare, but could still help with organizing and lifting boxes for a couple of hours. She didn't take that well and texted, "If you can't commit fully, don't bother coming at all. I guess you really don't care about family." I felt blindsided because I genuinely wanted to help in a way that didn't conflict with my commitments, but apparently it wasn't enough for her. I ended up not going at all because the atmosphere was already tense and I didn't want to be dragged into a shouting match in front of her kids. When Sunday came, Emma posted pictures on social media of her new apartment completely unpacked, but she looked exhausted, and her captions were like, "Managed it all without a single sibling to help. Feeling very alone this weekend." I know she was trying to guilt me publicly. Our parents called me later that evening and asked why I hadn't helped, and when I explained my side, they were visibly frustrated and said I should have put family first. I understand where they're coming from, but it felt wrong to me to completely cancel my own plans for something I had already explained I couldn't do fully. After all this, Emma texted me saying that our relationship might need a break and that maybe I should reevaluate my priorities because family should always come first. This really hurt me because I genuinely care about her and her kids, but I also feel like she's expecting me to drop everything whenever she decides she needs help. I feel like I set reasonable boundaries, and now she's painting me as selfish and uncaring. My partner, 35M, thinks I handled it fine and that Emma's reaction is over the top. He pointed out that I offered to help in a way that worked for both of us, but she refused to compromise. My friends are divided. Some say I should have just canceled my workshop because it was family, and others think she is being manipulative by guilt-tripping me. I honestly feel torn because I do want to support my sister, but I also don't want to be her backup parent whenever she's stressed. I'm now getting messages from Emma asking if I'm going to be part of her life, or if I'm too selfish to care about family at all. I haven't responded yet because I feel like nothing I say will satisfy her at this point. I want to reach out and maintain some connection, but I also want to stick to my boundaries because otherwise this pattern will never end. I'm feeling really guilty, but also frustrated because I feel like I'm being punished for having a life outside of her and her children. So AITA for refusing to take full responsibility for her kids this weekend while she moved, even though I offered to help in other ways. AITA for potentially ruining my sister's wedding over a disagreement about my role in it. 28F, have always been very close to my younger sister, Emily, 25F. Growing up, we shared everything from secrets to clothes, and our relationship has always been strong. Our parents divorced when I was 18, and I basically helped raise Emily after that. I love her dearly and was thrilled when she got engaged last year to her fiancé, Mark, 27M. From the moment she told me about her engagement, I was involved in the wedding planning in any way she wanted me to be. I thought I was helping, but apparently I may have overstepped. Emily and Mark's wedding was supposed to be in our hometown, a small, picturesque town we grew up in. Emily wanted a somewhat traditional wedding, but she also wanted it to be fun and not too rigid. When she asked me to be her maid of honor, I was ecstatic and immediately agreed. She also asked me to help with the guest list, decorations, and even some of the catering decisions because she knew I have experience planning events from volunteering in college. I was careful to not make decisions without consulting her, or at least I thought I was. This is where the problem started. About 6 months before the wedding, Emily and I had a long discussion about the seating arrangements. She was struggling with figuring out who should sit where, especially with some of our extended family members who don't get along. I offered to take a stab at creating the seating chart, but she seemed hesitant and told me she would think about it. A week later, she came back and said, "Okay, if you want to try, go ahead, but don't blame me if anyone gets offended." I thought I could handle it tactfully, so I started working on it. I sent her a draft, and she made some changes, mostly minor tweaks. Everything seemed fine at that point. Then came the topic of the bridesmaids' dresses. Emily wanted us all in a specific shade of blush pink, and I agreed that it looked great on everyone. However, one of the bridesmaids, Sarah, 26F, who is Emily's best friend from college, expressed concern about the color and said she didn't feel comfortable in it. Emily was torn, and she asked me what I thought. I suggested that maybe we could get a slightly different shade for Sarah that would complement the rest without standing out too much. Emily agreed. Sarah ended up happy, and I thought we had found a compromise. The real conflict started with the wedding favors and welcome bags. Emily had originally planned for simple gift bags with a few local treats and a handwritten note. I, trying to be helpful, suggested we include some small, personalized items that I thought would make the gifts more memorable. I went ahead and ordered them after confirming with Emily via text. When the gifts arrived, Emily seemed upset. She said she didn't think we needed so many extras and that the personalized items made the bags feel cluttered. I argued that guests would appreciate the thought and that it was all in good spirit. We had a heated discussion, and I eventually apologized and offered to remove the items. She calmed down, but there was tension that I felt lingered. Fast forward to a month before the wedding. Emily wanted to finalize the ceremony program. She had drafted a version and sent it to me for review. I noticed a few typos and suggested some wording changes to make the vows and readings flow better. Emily responded tersely, saying she didn't want me rewriting her words and that she wanted the program as she originally wrote it. I apologized, but felt hurt because I was only trying to help. At this point, I realized she was starting to pull away from my involvement, but I thought it was just pre-wedding stress. 2 weeks before the wedding, Mark asked me to help coordinate the rehearsal dinner. I agreed, thinking it was just another way to support the couple. During the planning, I had to communicate with vendors, organize timelines, and ensure everything would run smoothly. Emily mentioned a few times that she wanted to keep things low stress and that I should not make major decisions without her approval. I understood and promised I wouldn't. However, one night, Mark and I decided to rearrange the seating for the dinner slightly to avoid a potential awkward situation between two distant relatives. I didn't think Emily would mind since she had trusted me with the wedding seating before. When she found out, she was furious. She accused me of undermining her authority and making decisions without consulting her, even though I was only trying to prevent conflict. The day of the wedding arrived, and things were mostly going well. However, Emily was noticeably cold toward me. I tried to stay cheerful and supportive, but she barely spoke to me outside of necessary interactions. During the ceremony, everything was perfect, and afterward, we had the photos and reception. During the toasts, Emily gave a heartfelt speech, but didn't mention me or thank me for all my help, which stung. Later, she pulled me aside and said, "I appreciate that you wanted to help, but I felt like you were trying to take over. I need to be in control of my wedding." I apologized again and explained my perspective, but she didn't seem to accept it. Mar told me privately that Emily was just stressed and that it wasn't personal, but I still felt awful. After the honeymoon, Emily has been distant. She rarely responds to texts, and when she does, it's short and polite. Our parents have expressed concern, and I feel like I ruined the relationship we had. I've always thought of myself as helpful and supportive, but Emily seems to have interpreted my actions as controlling. I realize now that maybe I did overstep boundaries in some areas, especially with the seating arrangements and the rehearsal dinner, but I genuinely thought I was acting in her best interest. I don't know if I should have completely stepped back after she expressed discomfort or if I was right to try to help prevent conflicts. I feel terrible about how things ended and miss the close bond we used to have. I am considering writing her a heartfelt letter apologizing and explaining my intentions, but I'm afraid it might make things worse. I genuinely want to repair our relationship, but I also don't want to make her feel pressured or resentful. So, AITA for overstepping my sister's boundaries and potentially ruining our relationship over her wedding planning? Or was I just trying to be a helpful sister who got caught up in wanting everything to go smoothly? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of how she treated my partner? I, 29F, have always been close to my sister, 32F. We grew up together, shared a room, and confided in each other about almost everything. Our relationship was typical sibling dynamics. Lots of teasing, some fights, but deep down, we had each other's backs. Over the last few years, things started to shift as she got more involved in her career and social circle, but I never thought it would come to the point where a wedding would cause such a rift. About 3 years ago, I started dating someone who quickly became an important part of my life. My partner, 31M, is thoughtful, kind, and very introverted, while I'm more outgoing and social. From the start, my sister seemed skeptical of him. She questioned his job, his hobbies, and even small things like the way he dressed. At first, I brushed it off as typical sibling teasing, but over time, her comments became increasingly judgmental and pointed. She would make jokes about him being boring in front of friends and family and would deliberately compare him to ex-boyfriends of hers who were more outgoing or successful in her eyes. Despite my attempts to set boundaries, she never really respected them. She would text me long rants, criticizing my partner, or send passive-aggressive messages when I spent time with him instead of attending events she wanted me at. I tried to stay neutral during family gatherings, but it became exhausting. My partner, being introverted, started to dread family events because of her attitude. I noticed him shrinking into himself whenever she was around, and it broke my heart. Fast forward to last year, my sister got engaged. Initially, I was happy for her, but as soon as the wedding planning started, I could see the red flags forming. She began excluding my partner from discussions, even though I had asked her multiple times to consider his comfort since he's very socially anxious. She made decisions about seating, table arrangements, and even photo sessions without consulting either of us. I tried to talk to her about it, emphasizing that he would feel unwelcome if she continued to treat him this way, but she dismissed my concerns, saying, "He'll survive. It's just one day." Things escalated when she asked me to be her maid of honor. I accepted initially because despite our issues, I still wanted to support her. But over the next few months, she made it clear that she wanted the bridal party to be only people she liked, which explicitly excluded my partner. She even told me in a private conversation that she didn't want him at any pre-wedding events because she thought he would ruin the vibe. When I confronted her, she accused me of overreacting and said, "It's my wedding. You need to put your feelings aside." I explained that my issue wasn't about attending the wedding myself, but about the deliberate exclusion and disrespect towards someone who is important to me. She responded with anger and guilt-tripping, claiming that I was trying to control her wedding and that I was being dramatic. At this point, I had to make a difficult choice. My partner had made it clear that he did not feel comfortable attending the wedding under these conditions. He didn't want to be humiliated or ignored, and I couldn't justify asking him to put himself through that for the sake of my sister's event. After days of agonizing over it, I told my sister that we would not be attending the wedding. I explained our reasons calmly, emphasizing that it wasn't about her getting married or anyone else at the wedding. It was about the lack of respect and consideration toward my partner. She reacted with fury, calling me selfish, saying that I was breaking up the family and that I had chosen my boyfriend over my own sister. Family members have since taken sides. My parents have been somewhat understanding, but are also disappointed that I didn't make it work for my sister. A few cousins have reached out to say they think I overreacted and that it's just one day, and that I should have put my foot down differently. I've received texts from my sister claiming that I've destroyed our relationship forever and that she can't believe I'd do this to her. I'm still struggling with the fallout. I feel torn because I do love my sister, and I wanted her wedding to be a happy occasion for her. But I also feel that attending would have meant compromising my partner's dignity and my own boundaries. I don't regret protecting him, but I do feel sad that our family dynamic has become so tense. I keep questioning whether I could have handled things differently, or if there really was a way to attend without conflict. But everything I tried seemed to be met with hostility. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of how she treated my partner, even though it has caused a major rift in our family. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.